Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I've been following elections in Uganda, and some of the things that we have seen are disappointing, to say the very least. We are still failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections. Unbelievable. Ben, what do you think?
Good day to you and good day to everybody. When we talk of Uganda, first of all, I remember we did a program where, President Museveni said, you guys have to vote for me because I have a few small little projects that I still need to finish. And this is after 40 plus years. He still has projects to do. I mean, I believe why in Africa we are saying democracy does not exist is because we do not understand it. I think we figure that holding elections periodically, that is a democracy. It's far from it. And I like the way you put it. You said we are still failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections. That is the special ingredient for democracy. Not just any election will do. I mean, when I'll give you an example of Zimbabwean elections. We all know what goes through the process and up until we get to voting. We know the rural people are forced, and ZANU-PF does not bother to hide that, where he says when it's time to go and vote, the chief would be in front and the headman at the back, and the people will be sandwiched in between. That takes away free will. Now, if you look at that, you cannot call that democracy just because you have had an election. That is a forced election. You forced somebody to do what they don't want to do or taken away their free will. I think we need to redefine democracy, and only then can it work.
Yeah, it is tragic. I don't think it's a question of redefining. I must admit I disagree with people who have been trying to explain away why we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections in Africa on the basis of, oh, we need to define our own democracy. The laws of thermodynamics, as are the laws of economics, as are the laws of politics, are universal. You will not come up with anything new. The laws of thermodynamics apply everywhere, here on Earth, on Mars, everywhere. They are universal. The right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country does not depend on color or nation or period. It's a universal right. We have failed to define what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. And this has been at the basis of our problem. In this day and age, we still cannot define what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. That is tragic. And no wonder we keep going round and round in circles.
I have to agree with you. You know, when you look at how, you know, the likes of South Africa, Botswana, I followed those elections. I think we also covered those elections together. You know, I was so delighted, and it was a graceful process. You saw the command center, you know, the entire command center, and each and every, you know, organization had a table, and they had their, you know, technology there laid out, and they were busy doing, you know, their calculations, I suppose, or their tallies, you know, that kind of thing. It was a smooth operation from what we could see. Then you go across the border into Zimbabwe. Nobody even knows where the presidential results or the ballots are counted. Papers for the ballots are missing, if not your name entirely. There is no verified voters roll. A new voters roll was produced, and funny enough, it still has people that died ages ago, and then everybody had to register their name. Did they come in? Did they wake up from the grave and do that? Just any election is not good enough. People will, you know, you will hear people say, voting is my right. No, voting is not your right. You need to have a meaningful vote. That is your right. I mean, if you go to, you know, like Zimbabwe, the process is so flawed, so illegal. Voting or not voting, it doesn't matter. The result is well known. So the process itself is a shambles. Why would you want to go through a process that really does not, you know, give you a say? And I think this is where the problem is in Africa. And our leaders have figured that out. That just give them any election, as long as they vote, they are okay with it. And they will do whatever they want. It's tragic.
I think I would like to emphasize the point that when President Museveni came into power, he had the opportunity to create a healthy and functioning democratic institutions. He failed to do so. And the longer he stayed in power, the less democratic he became. He has been in power for 40 years and still is hanging on. The level of violence that we have seen taking place, this is at another level. We've talked of failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections by somehow cheating people, denying them their right to vote, failing to produce um, a voters' roll. But when you start getting involved in violence, that is another level. The kind of level that we've seen on television where the police and the army go to the opposition rallies and throw tear gas under the pretext that they are maintaining peace is totally unacceptable. This is another level. And this, I think this is what makes it so tragic about Africa. We still cannot understand that everyone should have a meaningful say in the governance of the country, and to express that wish, who they want to rule the country, confident that they will not be punished in any way. I think that is what has been lacking. And it is a pity that we are talking about these things over and over again, and Africa still has failed to honor those basic and fundamental rights, like the right to a meaningful vote. To me, that is what is so tragic about Africa.
Now that we have failed the democratic process, or we could not live up to it, we have now figured in our minds that the best option for Africa, or for us as Africa, I'm quoting from what I understood even from the likes of, uh, Maponga, even Professor Lumumba at one stage, suggested that democracy is a concept for the Europeans. So we have now figured that our process is military coups. And well, I have a good surprise. Even if we look at the countries that went through military coups, they went on to have dictators after that. All these guys, the Museveni, they came through the same process of a military coup. Once you do not have strong institutions that are independent and well functioning and well grounded, whatever method you try will not work, because those that you put in power will go on to abuse that. This is why you find once they're in power, it's very, very difficult to remove them. And I once even said this: imagine the like of Nelson Chamisa. He's about 40. Had he gone into power with the same institutions that we have, would you think that he would have left after 2 terms? The answer is no. He would have gone on to use the same method to keep hold of power. You look at the likes of Museveni, Mugabe, and many other dictators that we had in Africa. At one point, they were a darling to all of us, especially when they came through. We thought they would solve everything. In fact, many people, when they were interviewed about Mugabe's takeover, they said they didn't even want to think about his failure. And my word, didn't he fail? Once you do not have the foundation that is needed for a country to be democratic, you are simply just talking shop. And that is what we have been doing. let's hold elections after every 5 years or 6 years. They rig them. The process is done. Go and cry later. And then guess what? We do the same thing tomorrow and the day after, election after election. Yet we know where the problem is. We need the way I used my word to redefine, because we have a very wrong definition of democracy. So we need to redefine our definition into the correct one. Democracy is all about free, fair, and credible elections. Countries that have practiced democracy are thriving. Countries that have gone through these military coups and that are failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections, there they are. They are defined there by that map. They are struggling. They are the ones that are in orange and yellow. We have a wrong concept. We thought we had it, but we were given a vote that was meaningless from the very beginning, especially when it came to Zimbabwe. The first election was vote for ZANU-PF or the war would not end. The second, we know it was now a bloodbath, an all-out war against the opposition. And for years it has carried on, up until the opposition themselves have just joined into the cherry picking. So our process needs us to rethink and redefine it, because what we have is wrong. Thank you.
The truth of the matter is, if you start on the wrong foot, you are in trouble. And I've said it on this platform that many people do not appreciate that Nelson Mandela's greatest legacy to South Africa was to start that nation on the right footing. He and his ANC leaders saw to it that when South Africa gained its independence, they respected the basic rights of all the individuals, the right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country, a free judiciary, a free media, and so forth. That is what has made South Africa work. Yes, the leaders that have succeeded Nelson Mandela have been questionable, to say the very least. But they've failed to drag that nation into the gutter as other nations like Uganda and Zimbabwe have done. Because Uganda, when Museveni came in, he never established democratic institutions. When Mugabe came in Zimbabwe, he never established democratic institutions either. And this is why countries like Zimbabwe and Uganda have never had free, fair, and credible elections. The longer Mugabe stayed in power, the more dictatorial he became. While the rigging of elections was a bit subtle, as time went on in Zimbabwe, we know that they became more and more violent, just as we are witnessing in Uganda. This is the tragedy when you start with a failed system, as we in Zimbabwe have done, and as the people in Uganda under Museveni have done. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
Democracy is a process. And once you fail to get the definition of it, you have just built your foundation on the sand, and you can quickly get swept away. And this is what we have seen in most African countries, Uganda, Zimbabwe, for example. We never had the correct definition, and we might not have even had the definition at all, because right now we don't know what it is. A lot of people, if asked what is democracy and what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections, a lot of people may not know. All they know that it is their right to go and vote on poll day. And that is not democracy, my friends. That is just a formality to make it appear as if you have said, you have had a say in the next, 5 years of your country. But the honest truth is, the election itself is so flawed, is so illegal. And the only solution to do there is to withdraw and fight for reforms that will ensure that we actually have a say. So we can continue to play sharp and say, yeah, it was a democratic process, because once these rulers have rigged, they will sing it to the whole world that you saw the people. They were all lined up, nobody forced it. And there you have just given them legitimacy to go on and continue to torture you. We need to stop what we are doing. We are our own worst enemy. Our claim that it is our right to vote is a wrong notion. We have the right to a meaningful say in who governs our country. And once we understand that, democracy will work, and it has worked. The evidence is there from the map that we had. The likes of South Africa, where we are all flogging, they understood it from the very first word. And I'm glad you brought up the likes of Mandela, great statesman, a good asset to the world. He showed his people that it can be done, and his people continued to do it. And we, unfortunately, we had the Musevenis and the Mugabes who quickly and knew that it would be me and me alone. And now we are in trouble. So the ball is in our courts. And it has always been said, this is the good thing. The international world has always told Africans, the citizens of Africa, you have the say and the right to fight for what is correct and what is right. We will only help you. So unless we start the fight, there will be no help. The choice is always ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I'd just like to remind our listeners out there that you can join us tomorrow and Sunday, using the link at the bottom of your screen there. We use the same link, and you can join us so that you can express your own views as well. My concluding remark on this one would be I cannot speak about Uganda insofar as what they should have done to end the Museveni dictatorship. But I can speak with confidence about Zimbabwe because it's now 46 years after independence. No Zimbabwean can put his hand on the chest, on his heart, and deny that we had many opportunities to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship in that period. We did, many of them. The best chance coming during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. We wasted it. That is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. We have had 25 years of the MDC-CCC party on the political stage. They failed to implement the reforms, and they've been conning people to participate in flawed elections to perpetuate the ZANU-PF dictatorship. That is another level of Africa failing its own people to hold free, fair, and credible elections. As a matter of interest, tomorrow we will be discussing that very issue. To the Zimbabweans there we have been following on social media, I'm sure you have come across the video where somebody reveals that Morgan Tsvangirai, Tendai Biti, Nelson Chamisa, they all were given farms. Tomorrow, we would like to discuss had those gifts, those bribes, had anything to do with the reason why the opposition failed to implement even one token reform in 25 years, 26 now, counting this year. And would like to discuss also the reaction of people when they learned that those leaders were given the farms. I hope you'll be able to join us. Once again, that link on StreamYard is available, and we'll be using the same link tomorrow and Sunday. In fact, all weekends we use the same link. And I think one of the other reasons why we are a failed state, why we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections, is that we, the people, have let ourselves down. We are the ones who have failed to define what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections, and to make sure that the leaders perform accordingly. We, the people, have been our own worst enemy. I hope you'll be able to join us tomorrow, and we can carry on this discussion. Thank you very much, and have a good night. And as for the people of Uganda, I hope that one day you will find a solution and you will be able to hold free, fair, and credible elections, because free, fair, and credible elections are more than a right. I believe they are the very essence of good governance. And God help us all, because we in Africa, many of us, have suffered because of decades of bad governance. We can do with good governance for a change.